Please note that this video contains discussions about racism, including footage of scenes which some viewers may find racist. Some of this content involves minors.
Black Pete is black, and I cannot change that. And when I'm playing for Black Pete, I'm for days trying to get off the stuff on my face.
De discussie gaat om de kleur van de Piet. Want veel mensen zien er een racistisch stereotype in. Maar andere mensen zeggen dit.
Zwarte Piet komt door de schoorsteen en daarom is hij zwart.
En waarom is hij zwart? Dat is omdat hij dus door een schoorsteen komt en dan zwart als roet is.
Long-standing tradition or outdated racist trope. This video will take a deep dive into the story behind Black Pete, or Zwart Piet, a key figure in Dutch folklore whose look has been branded by some as racist. On the 5th of December every year, the Dutch celebrate Sinterklaas, a day dedicated to St Nicholas. Like Santa Claus, Sinterklaas brings presents for all the children. Instead of elves, Sinterklaas is traditionally aided by his sidekick, Black Pete.
Yeah, so the Black Pete tradition, historians think that it's already 16th century, 17th century, or maybe even older. But the form that we know it best is it was developed in the 19th century as a Protestant tradition, which is interesting because it's actually originally a Catholic feast, of course, but it became a Protestant and Catholic tradition in the 19th century, in which Sinterklaas was a person who brought gifts to children on the 5th of December, and he was held by one or two Zwarte Pieten, so Black Petes, who were totally black, red lips, earrings, and curly hair. Well, it was based on some racial ideas about African people and African people as slaves to this St. Nicholas.
While celebrating Sinterklaas, many Dutch people will dress up as Black Pete, prompting outcry from those who view his appearance as racist. If you search for images of Black Pete, you'll find parades featuring hundreds of adults and children, dressed up in what many would consider as blackface. However, in recent years, attitudes have been changing following a number of protests fueled by the global Black Lives Matter movement after the murder of George Floyd. In this video, I went to Rotterdam to witness the arrival of Sinterklaas and the Black Pete parade for myself, to see what the festivities entail today. This is Erasmus Bridge in Rotterdam, a world-famous landmark and a symbol of the Netherlands. Under it, on a freezing cold, rainy Sunday, I stood with hundreds of young families braving the weather to welcome Sinterklaas to the Netherlands. Before his arrival, the crowd were kept entertained for over an hour by a group of volunteers from the St Nicholas Entry Committee. This is a body which organises Sinterklaas's arrival every year. As you can see, the volunteers are all dressed up as Black Petes. The central attraction is an outdoor stage which features Disco Pete and his Pete friends all dancing to traditional Dutch songs, and some unique 80s disco remakes of songs that might be more familiar to viewers in the UK. Some Petes sing and dance on stage, others dance with the crowds and hand out traditional Dutch biscuits called Kroudnoten. A stuntman dressed as Pete even abseiled off a high-rise building nearby. Some of the volunteers had small amounts of black makeup on their face, which many claim mimics the soot from the chimneys which Black Pete climbs down as he helps Sinterklaas deliver presents to the children. Some of the Petes, including Disco Pete, had glitter on their cheeks instead. In terms of the crowd, most people I saw at the event were simply dressed in ordinary clothes. A few children were dressed in Black Pete costumes, some just had the traditional hat, and a few had their cheeks painted with small amounts of black or grey makeup. The vast majority of people at the celebrations, that I saw at least, did not have black makeup on their faces, and I did not see anyone sporting afro wigs, gold earrings, or with painted on enlarged lips, the stereotypes of the traditional Black Pete costume. The St Nicholas Arrival Committee, which organises all of this, has links with local government officials here too. It collaborates with the municipality of Rotterdam to organise these events every year, and the mayor of Rotterdam even made a speech on stage at the event, after being welcomed by Disco Pete and his helpers. Views on the Black Pete tradition in the Netherlands have become increasingly polarised in recent years, indicating changing attitudes towards racism. Some countries in the Dutch Caribbean, states which were previously Dutch colonies, have discussed banning Black Pete altogether. Despite these developments, Statista reported that in 2023, 90% of Dutch people they polled still did not consider Black Pete to be inherently offensive. More nuanced changes in attitude are evident from their research though. Around 55% of people reported that they were happy to consider changing the look of Black Pete in the years 2020 and 2021.
This is up from around 10% in 2013. Following the murder of George Floyd in 2020, anti-racism protests in the Netherlands turned on Black Pete. Prime Minister at the time, Mark Rutte, announced his views on the tradition had changed, and he now understood that it could be seen as discriminatory. However, it should be noted that Rutte did admit to having dressed up as Black Pete in the past himself.
And when I'm playing for Black Pete, I'm for days trying to get off the stuff on my face.
Anti-racism protests in 2020 do seem to have impacted the public significantly in the Netherlands too. Dutch current affairs programme N Vandaag noted a change in the attitudes of their opinion panel when comparing polls from 2019 and 2020. In 2019, 46% of people aged between 18 and 25 wanted to change Black Pete. This rose to 72% in 2020. In the over 65s category, these figures rose from 14% in 2019 to 25% in 2020. Having now witnessed firsthand a modern-day Black Pete celebration, I wanted to speak to some Dutch people directly about their views on the tradition. Given the sensitivity of this topic, I decided it wasn't appropriate to vox pop random Dutch people in the streets about the tradition, so I settled for a few sit-down interviews with some Dutch students and a Dutch history professor to give viewers some more context on the Dutch perspective. These interviews are not intended to present a representative sample of the Dutch population.
It's a really important tradition. It's a really big thing. It's mostly for children, of course.
The fact that it's mostly focused on children makes it less important to me now. But I do know that as a child, it was very important to me because it was so fun. Like, it was such a big thing, and there were these parades, and you would have like activities. And of course, you get like lots of gifts, and you'd be with your family, which is all very fun.
I think it's very central to like the Dutch culture, basically.
As you grow older, you kind of realize that in the big cities, they seem to have regained some of their sanity.
Many cities, many regions get rid of Zwarte Piet and just have Piet, not being black, but being white or maybe purple or some other color that is not, has racial connotations.
And now they say like a roetpiet, what means that they don't have like the full black face anymore, but they have like the stripes because the tradition is that they comes from the chimney. So yeah, they have now the stripes and not like the full black face anymore. And I think that's definitely a good thing.
And they're starting to move away from the obvious racist stereotypes. So instead of like obvious racism, it's like a tradition that stems from it, which is ambiguous at best.
So in my opinion, that is no longer racist because there's clearly no, or at least they try to no longer depict themselves as being African.
I was born in Kenya, as well as like my little brother, and I grew up there until I was 12, so basically way past the age of still believing in Sinterklaas. I remember we celebrated it once at a Dutch embassy, and there was like the official Sinterklaas. He was dressed up, and they had a horse and everything. But the Black Peets were like completely black-faced back then, and were Dutch people like dressed up. And I remember that it freaked me and my brother out a lot, so we never went back. We did one Sinterklaas there with the Dutch embassy, and then my parents were like, okay, they don't like this.
So it had become the main, I think, component of the Dutch culture war. Are you for or against Zwarte Piet? That's what makes you progressive or conservative.
In the beginning, it was very controversial to even say that it would be something that resembled racism. And right now, it's like, I think it's around 50-50 in the Dutch population that kind of thinks that way.
When it became a discussion, national discussion, I was already too old to like partake in the actual Sinterklaas tradition. But I always thought it was like racist from the moment that I had like that consciousness.
The roots of what's happening there are racist. And I'm not sure as to the possibilities of trying to pick away at the racism and then to leave something which is not also just fundamentally from that place.
But I think we should start with recognizing that it is an inherently racist tradition, and that we should, before we change everything and like gloss over the fact that it's no longer blackface, I think we should admit that it was racist to begin with, and that we should make it more inclusive to everyone in the Dutch community.
Well, I think the Black Pete tradition itself will eventually die out.
I think it would be too much of a leap to like erase the helper Piet's position from the tradition entirely. So I would probably like change him to be not racist, obviously, to like change it to modern times.
You see that the look of it has changed, and I think that that's very positive, and I hope it changes even faster in the future. So, and I do expect it to happen. Yeah.
Traditions can change, and it's like not at all a problem to change them.
Since I began working on this video, the Dutch political climate has veered to the right, with the Party for Freedom under the leadership of Geert Wilders gaining the most seats in the Dutch parliament in the 2023 election. Geert Wilders is considered a populist by some observers, perhaps most famous for his vehemently anti-Islamic beliefs and anti-immigration position. In 2020, the BBC reported Wilders' response on X, formerly Twitter, to Prime Minister Mark Rutte denouncing the Black Piet tradition. He described Rutte as, quote, joining the leftist multi-culti camp and opposing Zwarte Piet, adding, we have a Prime Minister who now stands for nothing. The PVV, Wilders' own party, holds on to national traditions well. For us, Zwarte Piet will remain black.
Overall, it seems that despite increasing backlash against Black Piet and the many ways the tradition has been altered to address the controversies around it, it is still unclear whether the practice will die out altogether. The rise of the populist right in the Netherlands and increasing anti-immigration and anti-woke sentiment in the country makes it difficult to know what the future holds. Is Black Piet racist? Is there any way to dress up as the character without engaging with a racist stereotype? Should Black Piet be written out of the Sinterklaas celebrations entirely? Only time will tell what the Dutch and the world as a whole decide is the right answer. I'm Lucy Baldwin, and you've been watching PalTV.